The world does not reward fairness. You can be honest and still be lied to. You can be loyal and still be betrayed. You can give everything to someone and still watch them take more. This is not cynicism. This is observation. This is what happens when you finally stop believing what you were told about how the world works and start seeing how it actually operates. And here is what I have observed. Most people are being played, not by strangers, not by enemies they can see coming, but by people close to them, people they trust, people they might even love. The manipulation is so subtle, so patient, so wrapped in reasonable language and good intentions, that the victim defends their own puppeteer. They call them a good person. They say they mean well. They explain away every red flag until they wake up one day in a life they never chose, wondering why they feel so empty. If you have ever felt that emptiness, if you have ever sensed that something in your life is deeply wrong but been unable to name it, then you are not crazy. You are not ungrateful. You are not the problem. You are being played. And today, that ends. I am going to walk you through what I call the manipulation blueprint, 5 patterns that manipulators use to control people without them ever realizing it. These are not obvious tactics. These are not the things anyone warns you about. These are the invisible architectures of control that most people carry to their graves without ever recognizing. But I am not just going to show you the blueprint. I am going to show you how to tear it apart, because knowledge without action is just entertainment. And you did not come here to be entertained. You came here to take back your power. Now, before we go any further, let me be absolutely clear about something. This knowledge is for protection, not destruction. The goal is to understand the game so you can stop being a piece in it, not to become the kind of person who plays these games on others. The world has enough manipulators. What it needs is more people who can see through manipulation and refuse to participate in it. Use what you learn here to defend yourself, to recognize when you are being played, to break free from dynamics that are slowly destroying you. That is the purpose of this knowledge. That is why I'm sharing it. If you are new to this channel, we explore the psychology of power, the philosophy of self-mastery, and the dark wisdom that most people are too comfortable to confront. If that resonates with you, subscribe now and turn on notifications. What we discuss here will change how you move through the world. Now, drop this in the comments. I see the strings now. Let me know you are here, you are awake, and you are ready. Let us begin. The first sign that you are being played is something I call the guilt gift. It looks like generosity. It feels like kindness. Someone does something for you, helps you when you need help, gives you something when you have nothing, sacrifices their time or energy or resources on your behalf. And you feel grateful. You feel like you owe them something. That feeling of owing them, that is exactly what they wanted you to feel. Baltasar Gracián was a 17th century Jesuit priest who wrote one of the most ruthlessly practical guides to human nature ever committed to paper. Most people have never heard of him. His work was considered so dangerous, so subversive to polite society, that the Jesuit order banned him from ever publishing again. They suppressed his writings. They tried to erase him from history. His crime? Telling the truth about how people actually behave. Gracián understood something that most people never learn. A gift that comes with invisible strings is not a gift. It is a trap. And the bait in that trap is your own gratitude. Here is the difference between genuine generosity and the guilt gift. Genuine generosity is given freely, with no expectation of return. The giver does not keep a mental record. They do not bring it up again. They do not remind you of what they did for you. The gift exists as its own complete act offered and then released. The guilt gift is different. The guilt gift is an investment, and, like all investments, it expects returns. Every favor the manipulator does for you is recorded in a ledger you cannot see. Every kindness is a deposit into an account they fully intend to withdraw from. They are not being generous. They are building leverage. They are creating future obligations that you never consciously agreed to. You will know the moment of collection when it arrives. It sounds like this. After everything I have done for you, it sounds like I was there for you when no one else was. It sounds like, how can you say no to me after all I have sacrificed? And in that moment, something insidious happens. You do not feel manipulated. You feel guilty. You feel like you are the one being selfish, being ungrateful, being unreasonable. Because how can you refuse someone who has given you so much? That guilt is not a natural response. It was engineered. It was planted like a seed with every gift, every favor, every sacrifice that was never really a sacrifice at all. It was a purchase. And now they are collecting payment. Machiavelli observed that the greatest victories are won not through force, but through obligation. When you make someone feel they owe you, you do not need to compel them to do anything. They compel themselves. They become their own jailer, imprisoned by a sense of debt they cannot escape. This is the architecture of the guilt gift. This is why it works. And this is why so many people stay trapped in dynamics that are slowly suffocating them because they feel they have no right to leave. So how do you strike back against the guilt gift? First, you name it. The moment someone invokes past generosity to demand present compliance, you recognize the pattern. You say to yourself, this is a guilt gift being collected. This is leverage being applied. This is not a request, it is a transaction I never agreed to. That recognition alone breaks half its power. Manipulation relies on operating in the dark. When you drag it into the light, when you see it for what it is, it loses its grip on you. Second, you refuse the frame. Their framing says that you are ungrateful if you say no. Their framing says that you owe them compliance because they gave you kindness. Your reframe says this: genuine kindness does not come with conditions. If kindness has conditions, it is not kindness, it is commerce. And you are not obligated to pay prices you never agreed to. You can acknowledge what someone did for you. You can be genuinely grateful. And you can still say no. These things are not contradictions. The manipulator wants you to believe they are contradictions so you cannot find the exit, but the exit exists. And it sounds like, I appreciate what you have done, and my answer is still no. Third, going forward, you become strategic about what you accept. This does not mean becoming paranoid or refusing all help. It means paying attention. When someone offers you something, ask yourself, what might this cost me later? Does this person have a pattern of keeping score? Do their gifts come with invisible strings attached? If you sense conditions lurking beneath the generosity, you have options. You can decline gracefully. You can accept but immediately reciprocate so no debt accumulates. You can accept with clear-spoken boundaries about what you will and will not do in return. What you cannot do is accept blindly and then be surprised when the bill arrives. The guilt gift works because most people are not paying attention. They are not tracking the pattern. They only see individual acts of kindness, disconnected and innocent. But you see the architecture now. You see the ledger being built, and seeing it is the first step to refusing to be bound by it. The second sign that you are being played is what I call the moving target. This one is particularly cruel because it exploits something good in you. It uses your desire to do the right thing as a weapon against you. Here is how it works. The manipulator expresses dissatisfaction with something you are doing. Maybe you are too distant. Maybe you do not show enough affection. Maybe you are not prioritizing them the way they deserve to be prioritized. And because you care about this person, because you want harmony, because you believe that relationships require effort and compromise, you adjust, you try harder, you give more attention, you show more affection, you rearrange your priorities to put them higher. But something strange happens. The satisfaction never comes. Instead, the complaint shifts. Now you are too clingy. Now you are smothering them. Now you are overcorrecting, and it is somehow worse than before. So you adjust again. You pull back. You give space. You try to find the right balance, and the target moves once more. Now you are cold. Now you are checked out. Now you clearly do not care at all. Do you see what is happening? You are not failing to meet expectations. The expectations were designed to be unmeetable. The target was created to move. Machiavelli understood that one of the most effective ways to control someone is to keep them in a state of perpetual uncertainty. If you give people clear standards, they can meet those standards. And once they meet them, they can rest. They can feel secure. They can operate from a place of stability. A manipulator cannot allow that. Stability is the enemy of control. If you feel stable, you might start asking questions. You might start wondering if you are happy. You might start looking around and realizing that the relationship is not serving you. So they keep the target moving. They keep the standards shifting. They keep you running on a treadmill that has no destination, expending all your energy just to stay in the same place. Too exhausted to ever question why you are running in the first place. This creates a specific kind of damage. It makes you doubt your own perceptions. You start to wonder if you are the problem. Maybe you are not trying hard enough. Maybe you really are too clingy, or too distant, or too much of whatever they are accusing you of this week. Maybe if you just tried a little harder, gave a little more, adjusted one more time, you would finally get it right. You will not get it right, because getting it right was never the point. Keeping you trying is the point. Robert Greene calls this creating a cycle of doubt. When someone can never be satisfied, you stop trusting your own judgment. You become dependent on them to tell you whether you are doing well or poorly. You hand over your sense of self to someone who has no intention of ever confirming that self. So how do you strike back against the moving target? You stop chasing. I know this is harder than it sounds. Everything in you wants to fix it, to try one more time, to finally find the combination that unlocks their approval. That instinct is human. It is understandable, and it is exactly what they are counting on. Instead, you hold your ground. The next time the target moves, you do not follow. You say something like this: "I heard your concern last time, and I made adjustments." Now you are expressing the opposite concern. "I need you to tell me, clearly and specifically, what you actually want. And I need that standard to remain fixed." If the expectation keeps changing, I am going to conclude that the goal is not for me to meet it. The goal is to keep me chasing, and I do not chase. This will probably create conflict. The manipulator will not appreciate losing their mechanism of control. They may become angry. They may accuse you of not caring, of being defensive, of not being willing to work on the relationship. Good, let them. Their reaction will tell you everything you need to know. A person with legitimate concerns will appreciate clarity. They will welcome the opportunity to define what they actually need. A person running the moving target game will resist that clarity with everything they have, because clarity is the death of their power over you. If you suggest reasonable standards and they refuse to commit to them, you have your answer. You are not dealing with someone who wants you to succeed. You are dealing with someone who needs you to keep failing. And once you see that, you can finally stop running. The third sign is perhaps the most disorienting of all. I call it the invisible jury. You are in a disagreement. Maybe you expressed a boundary. Maybe you questioned something they did. Maybe you simply had a different perspective and dared to voice it. And then they say it. Everyone agrees with me. People have been talking. Your friends think you are being unreasonable. My family never understood what I see in you. In an instant, the conversation transforms. You are no longer disagreeing with one person. You are standing trial before an invisible jury. Unnamed witnesses have testified against you. Faceless judges have already reached their verdict, and you have been found guilty without ever seeing the evidence or facing your accusers. This technique is devastatingly effective because it attacks something primal in us. We are social creatures. We evolved in tribes where being rejected by the group could mean death. That ancient programming is still running. When someone suggests that everyone is talking about us, judging us, finding us wanting, it triggers a survival-level panic. We stop thinking about whether we are right or wrong. We start thinking about how to rehabilitate our reputation. We become desperate to prove ourselves to a crowd that may not even exist. Robert Greene observed that invoking absent third parties is one of the oldest manipulation tactics in human history. When you claim to speak for a group, you transform yourself from an opponent into a neutral messenger. You are not the one attacking. You are merely reporting the attacks of others. Your hands appear clean. Your motives appear pure. You are just telling them what everyone thinks. But here is what you must understand. The invisible jury almost never exists. And when it does exist, it has been carefully curated, selectively quoted, or entirely fabricated to serve the manipulator's purposes. Think about it. Did they actually have detailed conversations with your friends about your behavior? Did your friends actually say the specific things being attributed to them? Did everyone really reach the exact same conclusion that conveniently supports what the manipulator wants? Or is this a phantom army, conjured from nothing, designed to make you feel surrounded and outnumbered in a battle that is actually one against one? So, how do you strike back against the invisible jury? You demand evidence. Calmly. Directly. Without a hint of defensiveness. You say, who specifically said this? What exactly were their words? When did this conversation happen? I would like to speak with them directly so I can understand their concerns. Then you watch. You watch the confidence drain from their face. You watch the specific accusation dissolve into vague generalities. Well, it is just the impression people have. I do not want to get anyone in trouble. You are missing the point. No. You are seeing the point clearly for the first time. The jury does not exist. The witnesses were never deposed. The verdict was manufactured by a single person who needed you to feel outnumbered, so you would stop trusting your own perceptions. Never accept testimony from witnesses you cannot cross-examine. Never defend yourself against accusations without accusers. The moment you treat the invisible jury as real, you give it power over you. The moment you demand it show its face, it vanishes because it was never there to begin with. If this is resonating with you, if you are seeing these patterns in your own life, do something for me. Hit the like button right now. Not for me, for the algorithm. Every like tells the system to show this video to more people. And there are people watching right now who are being played and have no idea. People who are exhausted from chasing moving targets. People drowning in guilt from gifts that were never really given freely. People surrounded by invisible juries that exist only in the imagination of their manipulator. Your single click might be what helps them find this video. So if this matters, make it count. The fourth sign is the most insidious because it wears the mask of love. I call it the velvet cage. It begins so gently, so reasonably. The manipulator expresses concern for your well-being. They worry about your safety. They notice that some of your friends might not be good influences. They think certain choices you are making might not be in your best interest. And because they frame everything as care, as protection, as love, it feels petty to object. How can you argue against someone who only wants to keep you safe? So you make a small adjustment. You stop seeing that one friend who seemed to bother them. It is not a big deal. You check in more often when you are out so they do not worry. That is just being considerate. You start running decisions by them before you make them because you are a team and teams communicate. That is healthy, right? Each compromise seems reasonable on its own. Each bar of the cage is wrapped in velvet. But here is what happens over time. The friend group shrinks. The independent decisions disappear. The hobbies you used to love get abandoned because they took time away from the relationship or because they were dismissed as pointless or childish. The job opportunity you were excited about gets talked down because it seemed too risky or too demanding or somehow threatening to what you have together. And one day you look up and realize that your world has become very small. Everything passes through one person now. Your social life, your decisions, your sense of what is possible, all of it filtered through someone who positioned themselves as your protector. You cannot even be angry, because every wall was built with your cooperation. Every chain was fastened with your consent. You walked into this cage, one loving suggestion at a time, and now you are not sure how to find the door. Gracián warned that true cunning wears no face. The most dangerous control does not look like control. It looks like devotion. It looks like someone who simply cares too much to let you make mistakes. But there is a profound difference between love and ownership. Love wants you to expand. It celebrates your growth even when that growth takes you in directions your partner would not have chosen. It makes room for your friendships, your ambitions, your individual identity. Ownership wants you contained. It feels threatened by your other relationships. It sees your independence as a risk. It slowly, gently, lovingly shrinks your world until you are entirely dependent and entirely controllable. Concern that expands your world is love. Concern that shrinks your world is control. It does not matter how softly that control is spoken. It does not matter how reasonable each individual restriction seemed at the time. The cumulative effect reveals the truth. So how do you strike back against the velvet cage? You reclaim territory, deliberately, unapologetically, without asking permission. Start with something small. Reach out to that friend you were guided away from. Pick up that hobby you were told was a waste of time. Make one decision, any decision, without running it by your self-appointed guardian first. Do not justify, do not explain, do not apologize. Simply do it, and then watch. Watch the reaction carefully, because it will tell you everything you need to know. A partner who genuinely loves you will be curious. They might be surprised, but ultimately, they will support your expansion. They will be happy to see you reclaiming parts of yourself. A partner who owns you will react very differently. There will be hurt, there will be guilt-tripping, there will be accusations of betrayal, of selfishness, of not caring about the relationship. There may be escalation suddenly, other freedoms you still had become points of contention. That reaction is diagnostic. It tells you whether you are in a relationship or a velvet prison. It tells you whether their concern was ever really about your well-being, or whether it was always about keeping you small enough to control. The cage is only velvet on the inside. From the outside, it is still a cage, and you deserve to live outside of it. The fifth and final sign is the one that enables all the others. I call it the slow erosion. This is why so many people never see the manipulation happening to them, because it does not arrive all at once. It does not announce itself with a dramatic moment you can point to and say, "There, that is when everything changed." It seeps in. It accumulates. It shifts the ground beneath your feet so gradually that you do not notice the landscape transforming until you try to find your way back to who you used to be and discover that the path no longer exists. Human beings are extraordinarily adaptable. It is one of our greatest strengths as a species. We can adjust to almost anything. We normalize. We accommodate. We reset our baselines to match our new circumstances. This adaptability, which serves us so well in most situations, becomes our greatest vulnerability in the hands of a manipulator, because they understand that they do not need to change you all at once. They just need to change you slightly, wait for you to normalize, then change you slightly more. The first criticism stings, but you dismiss it as a bad day, an off moment, not representative of how things really are between you. The first boundary crossed bothers you, but you tell yourself it was not that serious, that you might be overreacting, that good relationships require flexibility. The first time you swallow your own needs to keep the peace, you barely notice the taste, but these small erosions compound. Like water wearing away stone, each individual drop seems insignificant. Only the cumulative effect reveals the damage. There is a reason the metaphor of the boiling frog persists. A frog dropped into boiling water will jump out immediately. The threat is obvious, undeniable, impossible to rationalize away. But a frog placed in comfortable water that heats gradually will stay until it is too late. Each incremental increase is small enough to adjust to. The frog never experiences a moment dramatic enough to trigger escape. This is the slow erosion. This is how people end up in situations that would have horrified them 5 years earlier, not through one catastrophic choice, but through 1,000 tiny adjustments that each seemed survivable in isolation. I want you to try something. Think about who you were before this person became central in your life. Not who they say you were, not who you have been told you were, who you actually were. What did you believe about yourself? What were your ambitions? What were your boundaries, the things you knew you would never accept, the lines you were certain you would never let anyone cross? What made you laugh? What made you feel powerful? What did you know, in your bones, that you deserved? Now compare that person to who you are today. If there is a gap, if the person you were would look at the person you have become and feel alarmed, feel concerned, feel like something has gone terribly wrong, then you have been eroded. Not in one dramatic collapse, but drip by drip, concession by concession, until the shape of you has been quietly, fundamentally altered. The manipulator counts on you never making this comparison. They count on you being so focused on the present crisis, the current argument, the latest adjustment required to maintain peace, that you never step back and see the full arc of your transformation. They are counting on the frog, never looking at the thermometer. So how do you strike back against the slow erosion? You rebuild, stone by stone, starting now. First, you document who you were. Write it down, your values, your standards, your identity before it was edited by someone else. Put it on paper where you can see it, where it exists as something solid and real rather than a fading memory. Then, every single day, you do one thing that the person you used to be would recognize. One act of self-respect, one boundary held, one refusal to shrink. It does not matter how small it seems. What matters is the direction. The manipulator used time and accumulation against you. Now you use time and accumulation for yourself. Erosion works through compounding, so does reconstruction. Drop by drop, you come back to yourself. Day by day, you rebuild what was taken, not by confronting everything at once that is overwhelming and often counterproductive, but by choosing, consistently, to move in the direction of who you actually are. This is not about becoming who you were before. You have been through something. You have learned something. You are not the same person, and pretending otherwise would be its own kind of denial. This is about becoming who you choose to be. With full awareness, with clear eyes, with the manipulation exposed and your agency restored. So where do you go from here? What do you do with this knowledge now that you see the game? First, you name what is happening. Manipulation operates in darkness. It lives in the gap between what you feel and what you can articulate. When you give it a name, when you can say this is a guilt gift, this is a moving target, this is an invisible jury, you drag it into the light. And manipulation cannot survive exposure. Second, you trust your own perceptions. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Your instincts are not random. They evolved over millions of years specifically to detect these kinds of threats. Every time you override your gut to keep the peace, you betray yourself. Stop betraying yourself. Third, you take action. Not reckless action, not dramatic confrontation for its own sake. Strategic action. You start holding boundaries. You start questioning the guilt. You start demanding that invisible juries show their faces. You start reclaiming territory from velvet cages. You start rebuilding what was eroded. And you do this knowing that there may be consequences. The manipulator will not appreciate losing their power over you. There may be conflict. There may be escalation. There may be an extinction burst, a final, desperate attempt to restore the old dynamic through increased pressure. That is the price of freedom, and it is worth paying. Machiavelli wrote that the world contains two kinds of people, those who understand how power operates, and those who become the raw material for other people's ambitions. Those who see the game, and those who are played by it. Those who hold the strings, and those who dance without ever knowing they are puppets. This video was about making sure you belong to the first category. The strings only have power when you cannot see them. Now you see them. The blueprint only works when you do not know it exists. Now you know it exists. What happens next is your choice. You can close this video and return to the same patterns, hoping that awareness alone will somehow protect you. Or you can decide, starting today, that you are done being played, that you will no longer accept guilt gifts as if they were freely given, that you will no longer chase targets that were designed to keep moving, that you will no longer be convicted by juries that do not exist, that you will no longer mistake velvet cages for loving homes, that you will no longer allow yourself to be eroded into someone you do not recognize. You are not a puppet. You are not a pawn. You are not raw material for someone else's ambitions. You are awake now, and that changes everything. If you found this valuable, there is another video you need to watch. It exposes why the people who seem kindest are often the most dangerous, and how to identify them before they identify you as a target. The patterns will disturb you, but they will also protect you. Click it now. I will see you there.